I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Cliff Ettridge.
The AI does enable you to collaborate through voting. It does enable you to look at vast amounts of data together, but it's not replacing the human. It's supplementing the human. And I think that is really important. I think with creative thinking, you still need a human behind it.
Cliff Ettridge is director at The Team. Since joining the agency in 2002, Cliff has led their employee experience strand, delivering projects for brands such as IBM, RBS, 3, and the BBC. With over 25 years' experience in developing employee engagement strategies, Cliff's expertise lies in developing ideas that bring basic business concepts to life and attract and retain talent. Today, he leads a team delivering work for BP and the Open University. He designs employer brands, creates internal communication plans, and develops campaigns to bring business strategy and messages to life. My interview with Cliff Ettridge is coming right up. But first,
my dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. As you probably know, Asheville and Western North Carolina were nearly destroyed by Hurricane Helene in late September. The Red Cross has deemed this a Category 7 disaster, which is the largest category they give. One of our member podcasters, Patrick Casale, is on the front lines there. He's an Asheville native who is living through and witnessing the trauma, destruction, and recovery his family, friends, and fellow community members are going through. Patrick started a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for relief efforts. All donations through Patrick's fundraiser go to local nonprofits who are helping with supply runs. Donations there directly impact people in need. I've given to the fund personally. Patrick has given as well, despite the fact he's having to recover too. The Marketing Podcast Network wants to help, and we know you do too. Visit Patrick's campaign at bit.ly/WNC help. The abbreviation is for Western North Carolina, WNC. bit.ly, bit.ly/WNC help. Any amount goes a long way. Even just $5 can provide a few gallons of clean drinking water to a family in need. Please join us in helping the relief and recovery efforts in Asheville and Western North Carolina. Go to bit.ly/WNC help today and contribute. That's bit.ly/WNC help. The full URL, bit.ly/WNC help. Donate what you can. Every dollar helps.
Cliff Ettridge, welcome to On Brand.
Nick, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, with such a diverse background at all levels of the experience arm of things, and kind of juggling lots of different things with designing brands, creating internal communication plans, developing external campaigns as well. Is there something in there that is your favorite to work on?
My favorite to work on. I always seem to work with brands that are in trouble. I mean, that's not exclusively true, but I've certainly, looking back at brands like BP, RBS, which is now NatWest Group in the UK. There's another bank, TSB. Often I find myself working with them when the brand is facing a problem. And I mean, you'd be a fool to think that your business can sort of float through life without facing problems. Sometimes those problems happen because of errors that can be avoided. Sometimes they happen because you're under attack externally, but brands face crises. And I think the thing that I enjoy doing the most is working with brands to turn them around. I love that sort of challenge because that's the point where you really can add value, because you are saving business value for employees, for shareholders, for customers as well. So that's really important to me, looking back over the work that I've done.
So it's really not the kind of business as usual. It's those challenges that we find ourselves in. So, what is it specifically that when you find yourself at one of those inflection points, it's almost like I keep thinking of like an emergency room at a hospital. And, a lot of times, especially in those moments when a brand is going through one of those crises, it can feel kind of like the hospital as well. Tensions are high. What, as a brand finds itself at one of those inflection points, what is your process for guiding through this emotionally charged moment?
I always look at three things, Nick, and I sort of summarize them as follows. Firstly, any brand that's facing specific problems should listen very carefully, not just to customers, but also to employees, what's happening on the ground, and be visible, and be prepared to be visible a lot. I look back at things like the work that we did with TSB in the UK when there was a migration problem with their IT. One of the things that bank did very successfully, and we worked with them on this, was to put in place a listening program whereby on a weekly basis they were gathering in so much data from what their colleagues were saying on the ground about what customers were facing. And that information was going up to board level, and boards were then able to make decisions immediately as to what the brand was going to do in order to address the problems that customers were facing and the problems that colleagues were facing. So that is the first thing. Listen a lot and be visible. And the second thing I always say is, play back what you've heard. It's not always apparent that people will know that you've heard what they've said. They need to hear you say that, and then show empathy and act fast. And then the third thing is to show authenticity, and probably where appropriate, humor. And there are brands that have done that. I remember back in the late 20s, 2018, 2019, KFC in the UK had a chicken crisis, and they ran out of chicken, which is not good when you're in the chicken business.
No.
But I remember their campaign at that time was they took the letters KFC and rearranged them. And they ran ads with the letters in the order of FCK. Now, you can do that yourself on a notepad right now, and you get the sense of what they were trying to say. They managed the humor really well. And they followed that up with action, though. They created websites where you could find out where there was chicken, where the restaurants were open. But that action happened internally as well. So for KFC's own branches, I think they'd closed around about 2/3 of their branches over a 12-week period while there wasn't any chicken. And they made sure that the staff were paid as normal, and non-salaried staff or staff on 0 hours contracts were paid what they would have earned at that time. And that is really important, because that shows that you do care about people. And we work with GWI, which is a research platform, and recently looking at some research where customers were saying that they do look at brands before purchasing. 25% of them said they do research on their brands. And in fact, around about 30% said they look to see if a brand is treating its employees properly before they purchase. So what happens in a crisis can stay with you for a long time, and it's really important that the way in which you act during that crisis, you recognize that isn't just about fixing the crisis here and now, it's about establishing the brand for the future as well.
I like what you said in there about humor also. And I think that can, on a good day for a lot of folks around a conference room table, humor can be scary, but the reward can be big, but especially in a crisis. Why do you think humor has such potency in some of these inflection points that brands find themselves in?
I think we want to connect as people. And I use the word humor sometimes not in the sense of the funny ha-ha, but more in the sense of connecting with people on an authentic level, saying that we are fallible as brands. We make mistakes. And if you do admit a mistake, then and you do it with authenticity, that sort of level of humor, then you get forgiven. There's something in behavioral science called the pratfall effect, whereby a study was done into people in interviews, job interviews, and during the study, a test group completed an interview, but part of that test group deliberately spilt a coffee during their interview. Now, when they then researched those people who were the interviewees about which candidates they may have given the job, it was actually those that spilt the coffee and authentically tried to then sort of clear it up that was seen in a slightly more favorable light. So you can definitely sort of, if you act authentically in a crisis, you can protect your brand. And again, I go back to the GWI research I was mentioning earlier. Part of that research, they asked a question back in 2020 about how much a brand or a company, in terms of the way it makes a public apology, can it make up for that mistake by the way in which it does it? And I think it was over 50% of people said that they would be quite satisfied with a brand if actually it made an honest public apology rather than tried to hide things. So it's the humor is where appropriate. For KFC, running out of chicken is not the same as a brand that may be in a very high risk environment, say an energy company, where and we know in these companies, because they do work in high risk environments, sometimes people get hurt or worse.
On Brand, we'll be right back after this.
Great days start with great underwear. So if you're looking for something special, give Tommy John and gift a better day. Everything we make is meticulously crafted from breathable stretch fabric for the perfect fit, including our sleepwear for him and her. It feels good to give, but it feels great to give Tommy John. Find something for everyone and pick up something for yourself. Because at Tommy John, greatness is in our very fabric. Shop TommyJohn.com/Spotify right now and save 30% site-wide. TommyJohn.com/Spotify. See site for details.
This episode is brought to you by Global X. Since 2008, Global X ETFs has been committed to empowering investors with unexplored, intelligent solutions. Global X specializes in exchange-traded funds that offer exposure to the artificial intelligence ecosystem, including themes like data centers, robotics, semiconductors, and cloud computing. To learn more about Global X's entire suite of ETFs, from covered calls, fixed income, emerging markets, and more, visit globalxetfs.com.
Now, back to the show. You talk about the need for authenticity and apologies. And I feel like these are all things that, for whatever reason, I can see it being a big part of your work, kind of breaking down some of these walls, some of these stereotypes that we have around um, being authentic, apologizing. Why is that so? I mean, it seems so basic, like what we teach our kids. Hey, you've made a mistake. You should apologize for it. But as we get older, just like so many other activities and interactions get complex, we get further away from what's often the easiest answer. And like you said, the research bears this out.
Yeah, we do. And it happens a lot in company culture as well. We don't like to admit mistakes. We like to be risk-free. And the world isn't risk-free. In company culture at the moment, one of the big sort of mantras is, the fail fast or learn from your mistakes. By all means, try something out. If it doesn't work, don't worry. That's a lesson in itself. Let's learn from it and move on. But in actual fact, inside organizations, nobody really wants to make a mistake. So there are very few learning organizations out there because everyone's trying to get it right first time. Or if they don't get it right first time, they're not going to admit it because they feel that it's probably a career limiting move. So we do face this sort of culture whereby we can't admit that we're wrong. But actually, increasingly, I think, showing that you're human is going to matter. And I know everyone's talking about AI at the moment. And AI, I think, is an amazing tool. It's fantastic, and it's going to enable us to create so much amazing content once we get the integrity and the ethics right. But already we can produce fantastic podcasts using AI, just informing that the model understands the content that we want to make the podcast out of. Nick, I'm not trying to put you out of work.
Come on.
I mean, we can create great film, we can create great written word. All of that can be created, and it can be used really well. But there will be those moments where people will want to interact both with each other in the workplace and also with the brand, and know that there is a human behind it, that there are people in the building. So I think we're going to see, for marketeers and brand managers, events, where we connect with people, where we put people together, are going to become so much more important. And that's the same is true for internal communicators. I think their work has very much been around exploiting the power of digital now through things like internal social media such as Viva Engage and Facebook's Workplace, and all of those great tools and intranets and so forth. But actually now, when you look at content and you ask yourself, well, is this AI content or human content? Sometimes it doesn't matter, but eventually you're going to want to connect with people. That's what matters, because that's a fundamental human need, is for us to connect in some way with one another. And I think that's going to become so much more important.
Well, you brought up AI, and I think that that's a really important point, because I think that we are so easily distracted by the conversation about all the stuff that this is going to do. And there are absolutely what you mentioned, and hopefully AI can help me create authentic conversations via this podcast, as opposed to replacing them, because I do enjoy sitting here and talking with folks like you, Cliff. But I also think we don't spend nearly enough time highlighting what you just said of, okay, so take the task efficiency, the homework, the resource bandwidth assistance out of the equation. And what you're left with are some very important tasks that I would argue we always should have been thinking about, and in some cases haven't been thinking about enough when it comes to a lot of what you've talked about, as well as our overall brand strategy.
Yeah, I think that you're right. You're right. It enables us to refocus on many of the things that will probably build much richer relationships. I mean, from an internal communicator's perspective, if I could find ways of ensuring that my content is running by itself around some specific content pillars that matter to my employees, and let's say I've got, you know, 3 or 4 education pillars that I need people to focus on, say safety, for example, and innovation, for example, and it's really important that my employees understand that as it applies to certain sectors. If I can train AI to push out that communication to people on a regular basis, but that frees me up to do so much more. It frees me up to focus more on how I network people, how I connect person A to person B or team A to team B. Suddenly my whole work strategy changes. And collaboration is one of the big things that all organizations are working on. And upskilling is another thing that all organizations are working on. If I can suddenly find the time to focus all my energies there, that's got to be good for the business, because that's going to enable the business to perform better and be more productive. And then from an external brand's point of view, if the AI is actually ensuring that the customer is getting the right information at the right time, at the right price, so you're targeting them really well, you can then refocus on different ways in which you want to be communicating with those customers, probably on more around entertainment, more around the things that are going to lift the spirit and make that brand memorable. Whereas AI is doing a lot of this sort of legwork in the background. It means you can focus more on that entertainment that makes the brand exciting, makes the brand inspirational and interesting.
When it comes to internal teams, and you talked a little bit about some of the different goals that you're seeing across organizations, what role can AI play in facilitating, one challenge as we've gotten more digital, more theoretically connected, but also interpersonally sometimes disconnected? You hit the nail on the head with the importance of collaboration, especially in creative organizations. Is there a place for AI to facilitate collaboration among teams more effectively?
I think that there is definitely the ability to do that. I mean, we use Miro as a collaborative platform for a lot of our work at the team, and that's started out in life as a virtual whiteboard where different people could come to that whiteboard. But the AI capabilities that Miro have now put in place enable very fast voting mechanisms in order for us to sort of sift through ideas that are going to work for a customer. So that's one way in which we can quickly sort of sort the wheat from the chaff when it comes to work that you're going to take forward. Voting mechanisms is one. Another great tool within AI is the ability for the tool to be able to analyze vast amounts of data that is on that board and very quickly give you a sense of what the content is saying on the board. But what I'm noticing working with tools such as Miro is that the AI supplements some deep expertise that's in the consultants' heads. It doesn't replace it. So we're noticing that the AI in Miro can very quickly give you a synthesis of a whole host of themes that may be on the board, that synthesis may pick up on maybe 60-70% of what we sense is right, but the additional 30% is actually what we know is right because we spoke to people, face to face. So it's definitely a case of the AI does enable you to collaborate through voting. It does enable you to look at vast amounts of data together, but it's not replacing the human. It's supplementing the human, and I think that is really important. In some ways, AI can replace the human, but only in the tools, in the places that we feel are correct. I think with creative thinking, you still need a human behind it. And I'd say actually, Nick, on podcasts, that the reason that podcasts I feel will survive, they won't be replaced by AI podcasts. There'll be some AI podcasts that are great just for sort of getting information out there. But the reason I think podcasts survive is because you and I will make mistakes. And we'll also go off at tangents that are unexpected. And that's what people love, is that chaos that is in the human psyche, which means that suddenly we'll take a detour and we'll go somewhere else. And people love that and want that within their work and also probably within their brands. Occasionally a brand needs to do something surprising that just makes you go, oh, wow, I didn't expect that. So a colleague of mine was telling me about a firm of lawyers recently who just decided to do some stuff on TikTok. They didn't have a TikTok account, but they just did a piece on TikTok where they were just talking about they were trying to explain how fees worked, I think it was, but it suddenly went viral because who thought a bunch of lawyers would be on TikTok? That's AI might not have thought of that. It's so unexpected, but it worked for them. So that's how I think collaboration works, but also how I think AI is not a replacement for us.
I love that. That is a great point, and it definitely makes me smile. I would like to use that as a segue to ask you, Cliff, for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Yes. The sports brand ASICS, and I never know if I'm pronouncing that right. That's the brand that makes the running shoes. They recently did an advert with Brian Cox, who was in Succession, playing the head of the family, the head of the media family, and he's stood behind a desk, and he stands up behind the desk and he looks out at the audience and barks at them that they're not doing enough to get out from behind their desks, and they need to do more. Workers need to take a break because you're not taking a break. And steps out from behind the desk, and there he is. His top half is a suit, tie, jacket, and his bottom half is just running shorts and a pair of these fantastic trainers. And off he jogs. And that to me was just two things worked there. One was the surprise and the humour that came across from suddenly seeing Brian Cox, seeing his legs, but also it was the juxtaposition, the sort of like tension of this corporate behemoth just sort of barking out that actually workers need to get out and get a break and get out from their desks and go for a run. So it just worked really well as an advert. And I thought that's the sort of creativity that I think can only probably come from a human mind.
Great smile, very on brand given our conversation. Cliff, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. They can find us at theteam.co.uk, where you'll see what we're all about. We're based, if you are in the UK, we're based in London in Borough Market, and so we have offices there. for those that have ever been to that part of the world, they'll know that the market, which is where Bridget Jones's Diary was filmed, is teeming with foods and beautiful smells and bakeries and you name it. So if ever you want to call by, just let us know, and you can take in the market as well.
That is great. Well, we will link up to all of that in our show notes, which folks can find at onbrandpodcast.com. Cliff Ettridge, thanks for being on brand with us.
Nick, thank you so much.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Hennika Watkins-Porter hosts the Entrepreneurial You, empowering entrepreneurs with insights on leadership, business, and success. Hennika, tell listeners what to expect from your show.
So we provide innovative business strategies and practical solutions to common entrepreneurial challenges.
And where can people subscribe?
Find us at hennikawatkinsporter.com, as well as the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcasts.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.